whoa. Whoa!
Hello, hello.
I'm running late.
Extra on a Wednesday. It's starting whether you like it or not.
I got this chair again.
Clock straight up.
Oh, you got
Did you
the
ever see
broken
this chair? How did I get this chair 2 days in a row?
What are you doing? Just a little armrest off.
I just tried to adjust the armrest and it came right out. I know we have other chairs. I'll deal with this one right now.
Oh my goodness.
What's the complaint about that?
Hey guys, how's it going? Hey, Wednesday, we are talking about today the legislative session gets going again down in Salem after Tuesday night. Republicans, all but one, boycotted the nighttime session. That is what the floor of Capitol looked like last night. They were supposed to have a 6 p.m. session to start going over the latest bills. And the only Republican on the floor was Sherry Helt from Bend. 4 others had excused absences. The rest boycotted. So we are talking about that this morning. We saw this in a much bigger way last year.
Right, but that image brought back those memories, right? Of all those empty seats and the Republican walkout last summer, for sure.
People were fleeing to Idaho. I remember Tim Knopp was in a cabin in Idaho as the Republican minority leader.
Well, there was a huge story, right? We talked about arresting those individuals and, forcing them to come back to the state. And, according to the Republicans, what we saw last night is not that.
No, they said they wanted more time to read through all the paperwork. They said this is not just about cap and trade. The session's only 35 days, though. It's already short to begin with. But don't you remember last year, the Republicans wanted to add in that you have to physically read every word of every bill on the floor.
Slow it down.
And so the Democrats, I was just reading, are saying, okay, well, we scheduled this night session because we need more time because you guys wanted to read through all of the bills. And then you don't show up. So what do you guys think of this? It's not, we're not in the situation we were last year yet. I hope we don't get there. Democrats control 38 seats in the 60-member House, but even if they all show up, they need at least 2 Republicans to get the 2/3 quorum. I'm trying to pull up, here's our live stream.
There are many ways to participate in the show. The newest way is through our text line. You can see that number right up on the screen in the corner there, 503-226-5111. So regardless of where you're watching us right now, and I know a lot of you are seeing us through Facebook or the KGW YouTube page. Either way, you can text that number with your comments. I always ask that if you do use the text line, include your name in the comments so we can shout you out by name.
So we want to know, what do you think of Republicans boycotting one night of session? They promised to be in when the legislature gavels in at 10 a.m. this morning. They said Democrats promised on Monday that they would temporarily halt the cap and trade bill in order for Republicans to have more time to kind of look through that paperwork and read it, which they said they would do.
Well, they said also to call more
public testimony
themselves,
which
right?
I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
Let's hear from the public who this is going to affect.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I just want to see everybody keep working.
Yeah. Right?
That's what I want to do. I want both sides. I want you to keep working on it.
There wasn't a warning of this last night, right? I mean,
I don't remember anything until this morning. I'm like,
usually
what
we'll have a heads up on something like that, like today or later tonight's session, Republicans are expected to do this or that. This took a few people by surprise, but I guess it shouldn't have taken maybe people by surprise considering the actions of last summer. But that's where we stand right now. Admittedly, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I have something else occupying my mind. Why is it some days I can connect to the internet through this laptop and some days I can't? Today is a day I can't, and therefore I can't actually see the very texts that I'm asking you to send.
Maybe you can just walk around a little bit and see if you can find it somewhere. So Rob St. Helen, good morning. We appreciate you always watching the stream. You're awesome. He says if the Republicans skip out again, all caps, they need to be fired, kicked out, whatever. I can't skip my job and continue to get paid.
I don't think they would say they're really skipping. It's a political move. I mean, it's not like they're going, we don't want to go to work today. It's play. I'm assuming, I'm talking about the way they're thinking, especially with the cap and trade. It was of last session or whenever that was. I think they viewed it as their only strategy, I think is the correct word, to halt that.
Well, now the Democrats said it was a political move. The Republicans are saying this was a move for pacing because we're moving too fast. We need more time to consider. So just to clarify what they say their motivation is, you may be right that it's political, but Republicans are saying it's for pacing.
Yeah, I just don't think it's right to say they're just not working. Get back to work. I don't think that's really a correct way to phrase why they're choosing not to be there.
I am not taking sides when I say this, but it's all political, right? I mean, I think like every move, every decision, every act is based on politics. That's what you guys do. You're politicians.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
That's true. Probably saying it's for pacing is a political statement. But.
Yeah.
So Scott Kaiser should make it permanent, or should make it a permanent walkout. Dems won't give on anything, so it works both ways. This is a short session. It's not for big bills, so don't bite off more than you can chew, basically, is what he's saying.
So the Republicans are saying, we're taking the evening last night to read over legislation and prepare for work today, and we're committed to ensuring that Oregonians have full access to the process. Slowing down the pace in that building is the best way to make sure that happens. And it says, I'm reading the Oregonian article just because I have it pulled up. She repeated a frequent complaint of the Republicans and some Democrats that these short legislative sessions, 35 days, held in even-numbered years, were sold to voters as necessary to make budget adjustments and other tweaks. But really, it's become a session of very, very large issues of our state that we are trying to squeeze in such a short amount of time.
Well, I mean, clearly it seems like if you need more time to consider things, you should be able to make that statement and work together of being at the Capitol and not playing what's, kind of becoming a game of sorts.
Yeah.
Or if it's a case where you say, hey, we really need this extra time, we'd like this extra time, can we have this extra time? You'd like to think that they would be able to work it out, so it's not a case of, we're holding this session still tonight and we're not showing up to it. I mean, I just thought about the
Doesn't
Jeremy
seem to be
Christian
the best
trial, which is
way.
in the news right now. The lawyers on Jeremy Christian's side of the table asked for that extra day. They asked for an extra 24 hours before the closing arguments because they wanted to do a little bit more work and get those jury instructions all ironed out. And the other side agreed to it. There was this sort of ask and acceptance.
Judge granted it, yeah.
So you would think, last night, if the Republicans really needed this time or really wanted this time for more work, then that could just have been agreed upon before the session begins last night. It's like, they didn't show up again. It seems like, man, why is it?
It's a hard thing because these bills are so. I mean, I think we have a copy. I saw on the story with Dan Haggerty, they got a copy of the cap and trade bill, and it's double-sided, and it's literally like this thick. And so if you're supposed to read any of it.
Go ahead. I'm just going to say that the comments are coming in fast and furious now. I'm going to read Tracy Larson's real quick. I hope once they're done reading the amended nonsense, they walk out. This bill is huge, and it affects the lives of every Oregonian. It needs to be voted on by the people of Oregon.
And it is. I mean, this is such a huge issue that all of us could be paying more, to pay off this gas tax and this cap and trade emissions bill. It does seem like a pressure time of trying to fit this in a short session.
And it's troubling to me as a voter. I don't vote in Oregon, I vote in Washington, but because there seems to be a lot of people, no matter which side of the fence you're on, that think it would not be a bad thing to put this on the ballot for people to vote. So it kind of, whenever I see lawmakers go, no, we want to handle this ourselves.
It's too complicated for voters. That's what they say.
This is a big issue. I don't know why anybody in a democracy would be against, generally speaking, just putting something on the ballot and letting the people decide, because I thought that's what we're supposed to ultimately be.
Yeah. And Democratic leaders have said this is too complicated for voters. There's too many little things attached to it. And
that sounds like they're calling us a bunch of dummies.
Right? Yeah, you can take it that way for sure.
I wonder, in terms of Republicans not being there last night, you said there were 4 excused absences and the others were I wonder if the unexcused ones, get an automated call at home that says, Representative Smith has an unexcused absence.
Like the schools?
Like the schools, yeah. I wonder. I just wonder.
Got to call it to work. Yeah, exactly.
I always call my wife when I get that message. Where's my daughter at?
I finally gave up on the text line for today. We'll try it again tomorrow, I suppose, because I'm just got this spinning situation on my internet connection. But on Facebook, I can read some of the comments that you guys are seeing as well. Tracy Larson says, if Dems don't want Republicans taking this extra time to read everything, then they need to quit throwing out astronomical amounts of amendments. That's viewer Tracy saying that.
And Stanford Walker says political people can't get along and work for we, the people. Vote them all out.
Yeah.
He's not taking a side. Are you going to run?
Well, that's the thing, right? It'll be interesting. If people want this ability to vote on cap and trade and they're not getting that opportunity, how will they vote next time they do have an opportunity to vote just in the election itself? You know, I mean, are we going to see a lot of changeover just because people are not getting what they're clearly calling for with this group of politicians that we have in place right now?
Did we have a poll question on cap and trade back when this came up last time?
We did.
To our audience, did we do that? Do you support cap and trade? Would you vote for it? Yes, no? Did we ever do that?
I think last session we did several days.
I believe we asked it, several different ways. One day it was even cap or trade. You could pick one or the other.
So time to do it again.
Rob St. Helens has a word of wisdom for you. Drew, when in doubt, reboot, reboot, reboot. You can just shut
Let's see if that
down.
works.
All caps.
Is that Jeff in Oregon?
Yeah.
Right.
Is that Jeff in Oregon?
No,
You said?
Rob
Rob
St.
St.
Helens.
Rob St. Helens.
But there's a Wi-Fi issue in this room. There can be. Yeah.
I always get Rob St. Helen and Jeff in Oregon mixed up. I do. They are probably two of our most frequent commenters. For some reason, I see them as almost like it's like my twin sons. They're like two peas in a pod. Jeff in Oregon, Rob St. Helen. I must keep those guys separated and identify them as individuals.
Hey, Tracy Larson on Facebook, thanks for watching this morning. She says they're against putting it on the ballot because they know it'll be voted down by the people. Ryan Moon saying the bill is literally just a smoke and mirror situation to get power and money. Susie says no cap and trade. And Dennis Wade says Democrats will try to force cap and trade on everybody. Next, they will want to get a sales tax and then find out how to tax us even more. That's what the sham climate change is all about, taxing people until they can't be taxed anymore. Would you guys, we voted down sales tax so many times. You pay sales tax in Washington.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? I mean, in Washington, there's the trade-off if you pay sales tax.
Sales tax or not?
But you don't have, income tax?
Well, I mean, I suppose I sit in that fairly large kettle of people that think, well, if we start this up, then the next thing you know, the lawmakers will just take it and tax the heck out of us that way too, and then so.
But I mean,
I don't really. I mean, I grew up in a state in Missouri where you have both. You know, I mean, I grew up. You had. And of course, generally in those states, your income tax is lower because you're also putting sales tax on top of it. I mean, generally speaking, I like a consumption tax, which is what a sales tax is. But I understand some things. Schools, for example, need something that's probably as steady of an income stream as possible. So I guess if you're asking me, I think it makes sense to have
I'm leaning more towards.
I think it makes sense to have both, but I get the people's fear. It's like, well, if you start doing a sales tax, you're not going to cut the income tax, and then you're going to tax us twice what you are now. I get that fear.
Right? Yeah, you would.
And I think that's the real hesitancy of a lot of people.
Cut somewhere.
You know?
I'm just curious. I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here because I'm like you guys are on fire, like with opinions and whatnot. I'm curious. Tracy Larson, let's see, Dennis Wade, Susie LaRocca Macy. Tell me what are the issues that are important to you. We know you're against cap and trade, and that's our focus today, but I'd love to know just a little bit more about like what you're interested in, what you think Oregon should be focusing on. I always think it's, you know, it's not just us talking about one thing. I want to hear like what you think about some of the other issues that would get you, you know, fired up or important.
And another thing about cap and trade, I mean, is there a path that takes us to a cleaner environment, which I think everybody's for, right, generally speaking? Is there a path that we can get there that's not just what I'm going to say the easy way out? And for lawmakers, I think a lot of people, I feel this way, think the easy way out is just, well, if we tax people to death, then they'll change their habits. Isn't there a different avenue we can take that gets us to the same point without attacking people's wallets?
It's interesting. Tim is joining us because you've been doing this series this week on the future.
Right.
We've been talking about transportation. Today you were talking about the Portland skyline. You know, I mean, we see construction cranes like mad over the past, 5-6 years.
Sure.
But I mean, this almost directly dovetails into that because the futurist that you talked to who worked at Intel for many years, now he's a private consultant, but he talks about, I mean, not only electric cars, but flying cars, autonomous, vehicles, and I mean, all that would certainly cut down on emissions.
Right, and also vegetation growing on the outside of our buildings is also a way to lower the carbon footprint as well. So yeah, the future holds some real promise for cutting vehicle emissions for sure. I mean, electric is no doubt. We've already got, I think it's 30,000 electric vehicles in Oregon now. Just saw that stat. I think I'm right, and it's a huge increase over the last 5 years. So I mean, we're heading there, and it's going to eventually be autonomous. It'll be flying in these kind of electric drones that are autonomous, air transport.
I think do we have Tim's story ready to go? Yes, let's watch it.
Oh, cool. Let's.
The past several years, Portland's skyline has been full of construction cranes. The city center is growing to serve a projected population of more than 2.8 million in the metro area by the year 2030. Looking around, you can see the development. We'll have a new county courthouse soon, built with an eye to the future. And by 2023, this city block will be home to the Ritz-Carlton, with hotel rooms, condos, office space, and retail. PSU professor Gerard Miltner says expect more.
So you will obviously see more development. We're growing 2 or 3% in population per year.
But Miltner thinks new rules that hurt the profitability of high-density housing will steer developers away from it.
So we're likely to see a wave of office development within the core of the metro area, rather than residential.
Get ready for big changes in how we get around Portland. Futurist Steve Brown says in 10 years, we will be growing up with some new features.
We're going to end up going into the skies, and we're going to end up having lobbies on the ground level and on the top level, because we're going to have pads there to go and get into flying vehicles that take us to other rooftops in the city.
Another way we'll be developing in a decade is with a smaller carbon footprint. Our experts say there will be a lot more live plants incorporated into structures. We're seeing this happening in some big ways around the world, and in a unique way on this new building here at Southeast 3rd and Morrison, dubbed the Tree Farm.
Some of these are a bit fanciful. In general, what they're trying to deal with is how do we develop an infrastructure that fits a low carbon future.
The efficiency of all kinds of systems will be greatly improved by cheap sensors and 5G networking.
You can start to imagine a city that is full of sensors that enable it to respond in real time and become much more responsive to human needs. So for example, sensors that show you where the parking spots, the open parking spots are in the city, that guides your car to them automatically, so you're not driving around in circles and contributing to 30% of traffic in the city. Sensors that let the trash collectors know which bins have to be emptied and which ones are just fine right now. It's going to make cities much more intelligent, enable them to be managed more efficiently, and hopefully make them cleaner and safer places to live.
Isn't he great?
Brown's great. Yeah, he's a smart guy.
I really enjoy listening.
He's got a great accent too, right? You like the accent?
I could listen to Doc forever.
Yeah, and he's an evangelist for future stuff. I mean, he's all about the positives that will come from it. I'm sure there's a downside to these things, some of them too. So, but great guy.
He's going to be here tomorrow on
Sunrise Extra. You
right?
bet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Taking your questions, taking questions from us, talking more about
How does he do this? Like, I mean, is he just plugged into all the right people that, I mean, he worked for Intel, obviously. They're kind of at the cusp of, technology.
Right, yeah, and I think it's a long-earned knowledge of technology and people. A lot of this has to do with really cultural anthropology. What people want is a lot of what he looks at in terms of advising businesses, universities, municipalities about what needs to happen, because that's what people are looking forward to, and the efficiencies that could come.
What was kind of like, you sat down with him for a while, and you're putting, I assume, the whole interview on YouTube or something?
I think we have the whole thing. Is that true, Andrew? I think it is. I think we will eventually. We've got chunks of it so far.
Was there a moment where you were like, wow, that is not, like, what was the one thing that kind of like...
Well, when he said we're going to experience more change in the next decade, in the 2020s, than we have in the past 4 decades. You think about what's happened in the last 4 decades. I mean, it's exponential growth. Then you're talking about beyond what we've already seen. Blows me away. Beyond traveling in vehicles, big data, and how we are able to know a lot more about ourselves and the way we interact with our environment, whether it be food, other things.
Did he ever
Yeah.
say how we're going to get a handle on the privacy issue with the advances in technology?
You
Did
know,
you even dive
we didn't.
into
Let's
that
grill him
even
tomorrow
off the
on that.
record?
Now, you know, we
I'm
should ask him
super
about that.
interested in that.
Yeah, it's definitely
When he
a
was talking
concern.
about virtual reality, AI, augmented reality, I mean, what's AI? Automated, artificial
Intelligence, right. Yeah.
And
Allen Iverson.
Other AI.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll know a lot more about ourselves. But
blockchain
do we?
stuff, I mean, all this, you know. like-
Yeah,
But a lot of this technology is based on, in fact, tracking you.
it's true.
Right?
A lot of it is
Yes.
based
To
on absolutely
Brenda's point, you bet.
tracking us and through our day. and
So
what
what's
we
your
are.
comfort level with how much others know about your personal features?
Yeah.
You know, it could
Ryan?
save your life, though, to have doctors know your complete genetic makeup and be able to tailor medications and treatments to you specifically instead of a group of people with coronary disease or whatever.
So Ryan Moon was saying my concern is how many people will lose work with all the
yeah.
automated jobs in the future.
Absolutely,
We do
yeah.
touch on that a bit, yeah. Truck drivers, manufacturing,
But-
in those areas.
Our futurist, correct me if I'm wrong, he made a claim, because that was running through my head, how many jobs will be lost, and he brought up that idea, but then he said, but our lives will be better because, like he mentioned, jobs will be lost because of this advancement in technology,
They always
but
have
our
been.
lives will be better because, and I don't know what he said for that, because I thought, how could our lives be better if we're losing jobs? So what was his because?
I
Do you
think
remember?
because the technology will be there to retrain truck drivers to use some of their skills in
else.
different
Got it.
areas and get them retooled quite well and quite quickly into new areas that will develop because of this new
Right.
features
There's
and
going
new
to be, I
technologies.
mean, jobs and ideas that we have
Sure.
no idea about that.
and-
Our
and-
little kids as kids will have no problem learning.
Absolutely, and the jobs that we have now will be helped by the artificial intelligence in different ways. Like an example we log a lot of interviews by hand. We always have. There are now systems now that will do that transcription for you. It's online. It's
minutes.
easy, and
Yeah.
it's so that's a
saved our
small
lives,
example
Jim.
of what's to come. I know it's changed my life. It's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've also, well, I don't even go down that road.
Oh, come on, Drew.
You're doing enough to where it's nice to have that one little thing that makes the job easier, but you're now doing, as a reporter, anchors, whatever, you're doing more now than you ever had to do in those job roles. I mean, you're doing the job of
Well,
a few people
I
now.
don't think
That's
our
true.
job is going to be around, for
Right.
forever.
Before they eliminate it altogether, they're going to see how much you can handle. Before we get rid of your job, can you be the photographer, the editor, and the reporter?
Yeah, exactly.
And then once you accomplish all three of those, we're going to just take it all
We're
away.
going to take it all away. Now, one thing Steve said is, if you're interacting with people, which we do a lot of, communications jobs, they're still going to be there. A robot's not going to take that over. Somebody's going to have to still communicate
Right.
and then put the stories together. So I think we're going to be okay, maybe for the
Weather's a
another
good
10 or 20 years.
example of technology replacing people. Because I think it's a very true stat. Overwhelmingly, I don't think it's even close. Overwhelmingly, most Americans get their weather now on a quick app on their phone or a quick website that pops up on their laptop computers. And I'm going to say 98% of those programs are completely automated computer programs, meaning no weather forecaster was ever involved. It's strict. What I see when I look at the raw forecast stuff before we alter things. And they're pretty good for the first day, but going out in time, it gets worse. But my greater point is, most Americans are now getting their weather forecasts from a computer, not from a person.
And someone may be feeding the data, but the fact is, to your point, hey, are we always going to be needed? Well, yeah, they may always need someone to communicate the information, but is that still a position that comes with a decent, I'm going to call your salary decent. I want to be better than that. I want to say it's a pretty nice salary compared to most people's.
Oh, it's all relative.
You're way above the average, right?
Mr. Bloomberg makes more than I do.
My point is that you're not going to. They don't necessarily have to pay that person that much anymore to do that job,
Right.
to feed the machine that's going to spit out the data.
Tracy Larson on Facebook saying truck drivers don't want to be retrained. Leave their way of life alone.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's
things
an
do
interesting
change.
take. on it.
Amazon
Things
will
do
run the
change.
world,
Yeah.
says
That's
Jeff
what I'm thinking.
Lucas.
Yeah, my father lost
I mean,
his job
everything's
to
going to be,
technology.
yeah. Like
He ran the big presses for the newspapers for years.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
all
was one of
gone now.
and 30 years ago, computer technology replaced the big printing press. And my dad, and it was a tough position. He was in his 50s, and he lost what he had always done. It's a tough spot to be.
Absolutely.
People used to pick fruit,
Yeah.
you know, and now there's machines that shake it, and it's all. I mean, everything changes. We've lost jobs to technology.
The only constant is
our
change.
whole
I
civilization.
think we sound insensitive when we try to say, hey, you know, it's going to be okay for the truck drivers because there's this technology is going to come up that's going to train them to do new things. Maybe that 45-year-old truck driver who still has 20 years of work ahead of him doesn't want to change his job.
Well, this will be in 20 years, you know, when.
Well, then there'll be a 25-year-old truck driver today. That'll be 45 then. And you know, someone's going to be in the middle of a career that they don't necessarily want to change, but they're going to have to.
You know, and they may not have to. They may end up being the truck drivers who drive the short
Automated.
runs, go home every day, and the driverless trucks are the ones that go cross country.
Yes.
So long haul would be affected first, according to Steve Brown.
Oh my
And there are
gosh.
companies that are doing that now.
Sure.
Of like,
So you gotta go.
I do.
gotta
I'm
go.
getting a
Autonomous
countdown. 2
fleets.
minutes, 1 minute.
Business fleets. Okay,
Chatty,
you guys,
chatty.
thank you so much. So again, tune in tomorrow. Send us your questions. Steve Brown, the futurist genius guy, he's going to be here live talking with us and answering your questions. We'll see you tomorrow.
I like an electric truck over maybe.